I'm Josh.
And I am Natalia.
And we're Hand by Craft.
Tell me about that trip in 2018.
So, in 2018, Natalia has had this idea, let's say, for Hand by Craft for a while. Mm-hmm. And she needed to go back to the country to be able to do this. And I needed to meet her family. It was, it was a cool little vacation for me. And
it's okay, you can say it was the obligated trip. You gotta go and meet my fams, and I have to pull your leg a little.
So we'd already formulated like the LLC of Hand by Craft, and like the next step was moving forward and really going down there and building these relationships. So in 2018, we went down to the largest artisanal fair in South America in Bogota, Colombia. And we went with the intention and the discernment of trying to find the actual indigenous. So not people reselling the indigenous work or these big companies that go to the jungle and buy it, but the actual indigenous that were able to make the trip to try and sell their items. And we spent 2 days there, thousands and thousands of people. And we settled on 2 different groups. Well, we got a bunch of different cards, but we settled on 2 different people we really thought we connected with. And I'll allow Natalia to speak to the Indera, who are the ones we do the most work with, about the story.
So, okay, I did have the idea of Hand by Craft back in 2012. I went to school for product design, and I did work for big retail companies here in the US, Hugo Boss being my largest account. Mm-hmm. So I sort of started to think of the idea of shifting the artisanal and handmade products, or something that you purchase at a fair, you purchase in the street, and it's this cheap trade, and really elevating it into a high-end type of product, right? And giving the actual value of what it takes. So we go down there. Josh is sort of getting acquainted to the Colombian culture as well, right? Like, I'm putting all these ideas, all these concepts, like, hear me out. This is what I would like to do with you, right? And he said, but what is this world? So I'm like, okay, come with me. Let's go to this world. I will share you a little bit of it. We walk the fair. It's insanely crowded. And then we start to see a little bit of like the difference of certain artisans, oftentimes not very traditional, in the approach of the indigenous to the foreign type of culture. So say that they will see the awesome American in some of the stands, right? And it will be like, it's quadruple the price. And you're like, oh, this doesn't seem very ethical. This is sort of a strange, I'm not quite sure if off the bat I want to work with this person. And eventually during those 2 days, it was insanity. I think that we barely sleep. We woke up on a couple of the indigenous tribes. Some of them had difficulties speaking the Spanish language per se. And when it came to the Embera to me, I think that Josh took a little step back, and I started to talk to the person that it was at the little booth. And I shared him a little bit of the idea that I have, what's my background, where am I living, who's my husband, well, at the time, my partner. And this older man hears my story, despite how busy it was. When I tell you, like, people travel all over the countries to visit this fair, it's that busy. And he sort of let clients go, and he hands me a beautiful pair of earrings. And after I tell him the story of what I want to do, he gives them to me, and he says, I believe in you. We noticed that a lot of the institutions, individuals themselves who work with these communities, oftentimes work under the understanding of donation-based resources. And donation-based resources, what they do to the communities is that it keeps them in a position where they have to extend a hand. So what happens if we don't do these donations, but we create empowerment projects where we provide maybe tools or ideas or resources, but they themselves bring this forward to them, to their community. So our first experimental sort of cooperation was checking the schoolroom in the community. Like we said, they do have technology, so oftentimes we video call. And there was this time they were sharing us a little tour of the little reserve. And we saw the schoolroom, and it's indeed very humble, but there was no chairs. So there was all sorts of desks, but no chairs. So I asked, so where do the children sit? Oh, well, sometimes they kneel and they write on their desks, or sometimes if there is a chair but there is not a desk, then they will get off of their chair, they will turn it around, and then they will write. And I was like, holy shit, like, okay, I didn't know that aspect of them, and they didn't feel ashamed of it, but we were able to change something. So we're like, okay, you know what, let's equip the schoolroom. It's not something that you spend and it's gone. It's something that it lasts. There will be many generations of young children that will join that schoolroom, and it will last for many years. So let's do it. We found a school in Bogota who was closing and selling items, and we found Elias. A cousin of mine went, checked it out. The principal of that school understood sort of what the project was about, and we blindly, with faith, were able to ship them to the location. Later on, we found out that a lot of the women didn't have their traditional outfit, so we figured out to create a beautiful sewing workshop. So we gave all of the materials, but they picked their fabrics, they picked their colors, they picked their embroideries, they picked anything that they needed to do to honor their traditional dressing. We just were able to provide these resources. Well, not just ourselves, everyone that has come over and contribute, because that is the truth of the matter. If there wasn't that sense of community, well, generally there was not much we could have done.
Right.
And last but not least, our last offering was this December. We noticed that there was a lot of trouble with the food empowerment within the reserve itself. So we donated a bunch of chicks, one per family. So we're at around 56 chicks and roosters that we were able to send. And let me tell you, everybody came together. They built their community coop all together with materials of the reserve. They were very proud to have their meat resources within their space and being able to feed them and bring them to their crops and take care of like pests and bugs and have that relationship for the young children as well. So it's pretty cool. It's an awesome friendship that translates into this work passion, and working feels like play. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I got. Oh, Josh, go ahead.
I just want to add to that. So when we do donation based, like she was saying, it leaves them sitting and waiting for the next donation, and that's not really empowerment. It's more or less disempowerment. So by purchasing these items from them and reselling them to the United States, we've helped to facilitate a market that they could never reach. And that is creating a more economic flow towards them. So they're not having to pick up some terrible job that they have to do or try and find work. They're able to actually create the art that inspires them, the art that comes from their culture.
Well, I think we have a beautiful team of 4 groups, 2 artisanal and 2 indigenous. The reason why we selected the tribes that we are working with, it's because one of them had sort of like a difficult story of repeating part of what had happened in the pre-colonial times. And it's a replication back in the 90s, and they have shared an incredible example of resilience. And although very challenging for them, they have open arms to really share with the world their beautiful culture, and that open-mindedness and that beautiful heart that really inspired us to bring that message to the Americas. The second indigenous group, the Inga Kametsa, those guys have been really true to their origins, and if you will, they have been untouched by a lot of the modern civilization. So you can see a contrast between a group that had to blend with the westernized ways of living versus a group that really didn't drift much from their true path. And last but not least, or as far as our indigenous background, but this time around, becoming fully artisan, that was the basketry product. So it is made by artisans with indigenous roots, but it's a product that is patrimony of the country. There is only 400 weavers left. So as an effort to inspire the young generations that look up to developed countries such as the US or Europe, and to bring the products up here just to spark that pride within the younger community, so they take back the craft.
To galvanize the young ones.
We closed with coffee.
Yeah. So we brought coffee because we figured people know Colombian coffee in the United States. And what better way to capture the public than to bring their taste and their sensation into it. And we had studied regenerative agriculture, and we wanted to bring a product that was supporting regenerative agriculture. So Indigenous Coffee is actually doing that. They're doing permaculture, regenerative agriculture, whichever way you want to call it. And because of how the coffee is being grown in the forest, opposed to being monocrop the way mass-produced coffee is done, people can actually taste the difference in the nutrition and the health of the soil. And that relays into the health of themselves. So we figured that would be a great kind of side, although it's not a product that you physically, will put on your wall or wear. It was something that really brought that sensation in.
Yeah.
I love that.
And we connect through really sitting at the table and through food. That is something that you can relate no matter where you go. You pass any airport, and what do you look for? You look for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
So that's something you have on a daily basis. And thinking back on the background of coffee per se, it was considered a ceremonial drink by the indigenous of the Andes.
Well, that's new. I did not know that.
So the coffee ceremonies used to take place back in Colombia, and it was treated in a beautiful, beautiful manner. So what it's like to replicate that type of attention and growth and respect to a drink that we now consume on a daily basis and find everywhere. So that is me. I'm excited.
But now you have coffee at the market with an abundant storyline or abundant stories behind it.
Indeed.
Right.
Don't be used as easy as a layup. Working late, stay up, stay up. Counting all the way up. Counting blessings, yeah, you know we pray up.
Right.
It's how people connect with one another.
See, storytelling is the memory of the world. Before there was the written word, there was the gathering around the fire, right? There was the voice of the elders. There was the sharing of the stories within the household and listening to your mother or your father's wisdom. And that gets rooted in you, and later on you, without thinking, sort of replicate these stories that have been taught to you. And when you dive into working with these different groups and to connect with the individuals that we get to meet at the farmers market, and really hearing their backgrounds, you understand that a lot of the stories that they bring themselves are tied to the same end goals. Love, abundance, prosperity, and health. And despite the many branches that each of those stories may go through, we find a commonality that is felt.
Fresh on the scene, franchise best on the team. Blue faces busting out the scene. New life is something like a dream.
Our plan is to continue to build these little documentary series.
Right.
Each of
So
the
you have a
communities.
few on your website. That are
each
ready.
of the communities. But it's also being able to go back to these communities after a few years of we've been doing this, so they can also share the effect, right? Because we don't really necessarily see large-scale effect of what we're doing yet. But we can see the ripple and how it started.
Right.
And we've got so many ideas, but there was just two of us, so, so it's kind of hard.
There's not a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll address one of our next plans is to create sort of a lookbook, right? So we have all this beautiful jewelry.
Yeah.
But people in the United States don't necessarily have an idea of how to wear it. People follow fashion in the United States. So how do we create this indigenous jewelry as a fashion statement?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not only that, it is, again, coming back to the hands behind the craft and remembering how the product was created and why it was created.
Yeah.
So one of our ideas is to have a book. One side is a documentation of the indigenous, how they wear it, sort of like a photojournalism. And you flip it over, and on the other side, it's a book of people in the United States that have found a way to implement these things in their fashion. To kind of bring both sides of the story together, the condor and the eagle almost.
Yeah, I think that when the
really cool.
lookbook, you will say, I called it magazine at the time, was to have a physical record of what is going on a yearly basis, but it has added interests. So per se, maybe we will feature the personal story of a particular weaver, right? And it's dedicated just to her. So the reader in the US will be able to connect with that person. Maybe there is a piece and they do take, say, certain artists will create a certain design. So if, say that maybe you're an artisan, so this is Hampton's design, and nobody in the community will replicate this design because it belongs to you. It came out of your creator's spirit. So
this actually happens with Eating Better.
This happens with them. They
Well, I read that on your website that it's infused with how the artist is feeling, where their emotional state is.
Indeed.
So it is a transference.
So featuring the personal story of one of the artists, right, that create these products. But moreover, for people who have the curiosity or want to get really involved, how is their diet? How about we showcase a recipe, a traditional recipe, and we try to recreate this type of ingredients in the US. So while you sit in your kitchen and you replicate that meal, you sit down and then you feel and you taste what it will be like to sit around their land. So you replicate the flavor, but you don't have to leave your household, right? And to gather these materials to replicate that essence of that flavor, well, what avenues do you utilize? Well, you go to your farmer's market, right? And you cooperate with that community. The photojournalism, which is part of what Josh is explaining, is eventually when the opportunity presents and maybe we grow a little more, we do have the invitation of spending months of the time with these communities. So going in there and living and
becoming a better ambassador.
Becoming exactly. And I think that by having these physical magazines, it will be an evolving project throughout the years. Maybe we can make it monthly, but how about a yearly, really well-packed, good magazine that you are looking forward to read?
I think that's a wonderful idea, because it's not just about receiving the offering, it's also about how do you apply this offering in the world that surrounds me, in my world. I think that's brilliant.
In the exchange, for example, we have shared with them through technology again, the change of the seasons. So for last year, that was mind blowing. I was sharing to the Newburgh, which I speak with the most or have more access to technology than the Ingas, the winter. And there was this incredible ice storm that coated everything with that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ice layer. So I was zooming in and I was sharing, and then he paused and he was like, wait a minute, but why does everything look dead? So it was, again, exchanging stories. No, it's the cycle of the North and the way in which things go dormant to renew themselves and to shed. But come the spring, again, at the farmers markets, and you find your tree with the buds, and they inspire themselves with the colors. So this particular year, they already had the records of photographs and videos that we shared from the year before, and they were able to make a fall collection, if you will, inspired of the colors of North America. So it was pretty cool to be able to have that exchange.
Community.
Yeah, diversity and community.
Yeah.
There is never a day that it's the same. There is always something fresh to look forward to. It allows for the true, genuine spirit of the people to come out. And you see it when we listen to the music, and all of a sudden you look around and all vendors are dancing and cheering.
Well, we know you will be dancing. Like, we know that much.
Our neighbors at Midnight Acres, we have missed you. You guys are great. Dance with us too. But
what is this movement like? This one is like consistent.
Yeah, this is the stay warm in the winter.
Shout out.
But I think it's that. It's spontaneous. It's revitalizing. It's energetic. There is never a day that it's the same, and everybody teams together. -5 degrees we did last winter,
Right.
and everybody really held their ground, and it was all about helping each other. I got your hand warmers, come over by my heater. What is it that you need? So you really feel that unity, and that's awesome.
It's a vibe. It's a vibe. A love note saying thank you. What is a love note? I like throwing that out. It's my random question. It's my wild card.
I'll have to meditate on this one, and I'll come
Maybe
back
that's
to
your
you.
answer, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I will write a thank you and love letter to my inner child for not giving up on imagination as an adult. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
That's who I will write.
Oh, man, I hear that. Okay.
My little playful inner child who one day thought it could, and
Yeah.
Unlike
Alexa,
where I come from.
Stop. Keep on. Sorry.
That's it. It's like what you said, like one.
Because I almost want to revisit quickly.
we're back. No, I'm joking. Sorry, you're gonna have to do this too. Please
It's all
put a
good.
bleep.
It's all good.
And through